Number one would be the actual work that has been done on the building safety assessments. The fact that over 1,500 factories have been assessed, and not only that, but also that the foundation for an institution that will bring this work forward has been developed. Yes, this work has to be continued in the second instance, but the fact that there is now this capacity, this skill, and this understanding of what are the standards that the factories have to comply to in terms of structural and fire safety, that is a big achievement in terms of the program. The second most achievement is the Labour Inspectorate reform itself. The fact that there is a complete new game plan for Labour Inspectorate. Yes, it may not be completely fulfilled, and yes, the Labour Inspectorate reform continues, but the direction, the organizational structure, the key personnel, the key tools, and the key means and resources for the Labour Inspectorate to do a proper job have been established through the sponsorship and support of this program. And third, it is the general capacity building and the general work around occupational safety and health at all accounts. Building the OS unit within the Labour Inspectorate, building a big over 2 million work sort of capacity building and training program by the employers, and building a consolidated network of trade union, occupational safety and health professionals or focal persons. This building an overall understanding of the importance of addressing occupational safety and health, and the means by the government, the employers and the trade unions to act on occupational safety and health. I think that is also a legacy that is good to build on in the next phase of the program. If there are about 1,600 factories or so that needs to conduct and needs to implement these corrective action plans, there needs to be a follow-up mechanism and an assistance mechanism for these factories so that they know what to do, they know how to do, and they have clear timelines when to do. This is the king idea behind the remediation coordination cell. So there has been a lot of discussions what would be the right kind of a mechanism for the future. And currently the thinking is that there should be a dedicated multidisciplinary safety agency that would be built upon the structural and fire safety work, so that the competencies and skills that have been developed over these couple of years, the competencies and the skills of the Labour Inspectorate, the competencies and the skills of the fire safety and civil defence, and the competencies and the skills of those who are responsible for building permitting are all combined under one agency that has credibility and is trustworthy and can effectively manage structural safety and fire safety in what concerns industrial production. That is the end game that we have in mind. That is what we are developing, that's what we are working towards together with the government. And where we see this happening is in the next 3 to 4 years, as it will take some time to develop this kind of agency. This is quite a complex technical matter, and it's also something that after Rana Plaza is somewhat considered completely new. It is new to the industry that they suddenly have to reckon with such a profound building safety and fire safety related work. The laws may not be new, but the rigor in terms of and the pressure in terms of the industry to go back and check has all these various standards and laws and regulations been actually understood, internalized and complied to. So that is one thing. And the second thing is that we're not talking only about going to the factories and doing some quick fixes. That is not what the work is all about. It is to fundamentally have a new look at how compliance and standards are applied across the industry, which requires better understanding of the standards themselves, but which requires also a better capacities and skills of the regulators. So while we are happy to see that the remediation work sort of in a very practical sense advances and continues, the key task is how to build up regulatory capacity for longer term to change the landscape of safety in Bangladesh. And that's what takes more time than the actual going to the factory and fixing individual shortcomings. In terms of the Labour Inspectorate, we must first acknowledge that the starting point was quite low. So there was not real trust and confidence by the employers or the workers to the system of labour inspection. And to a certain extent, maybe there was no confidence by the labour inspectors themselves in executing their mandates and duties. So the reform process that the government has put in motion and that the ILO is supporting and helping with is really aimed at reforming the totality of the functions of the Labour Inspectorate and create a new culture of inspection. So that's why it's an attempt to profoundly change the way that the Labour Inspectorate works. So there may be four key areas of work in terms of the Labour Inspectorate reform. One of them is looking at the system of labour inspection itself. So it's the business practices, it's the checklists, it's the way that the labour inspectors go to the factories, they introduce themselves, and it's the confidence that they do that inspection visit with. So that's quite a big chunk of work. Secondly, it's really about bringing a lot of new people to the Labour Inspectorates, because part of the reform there is an upgradation of the Labour Inspectorate itself, adding hundreds of new people to the Labour Inspectorate force. So these new people need to be trained with these new methods, and they need to have an understanding on how to do their job. They need to have the confidence, they need to have the role, and they need to be able to practice that role. So there's a lot of things that are being done in terms of Labour Inspectorate training, and also in terms of their motivation and their understanding of the job. And thirdly, there's quite a lot of work that has been done in terms of credibility and transparency. It's very important that the workers and the employers trust and understand what the labour inspection system is there for, and how they can capitalize and work with the Labour Inspectorate. So there's a lot of work on ethics, on transparency, on integrity, and informing the employers and workers about the job of the labour inspectors. And lastly, but quite importantly too, there has to be a public recognition and awareness of Labour Inspectorate. So there's a bit of marketing of the Labour Inspectorate and the Ministry of Labour's and Inspectorate's role in the society. That is also important. It is important that everybody in Bangladesh knows that there is such an institution as a Labour Inspectorate, and this is their mandate, this is their role, and this is what they can be asked to do for the people in Bangladesh. In the same manner as there have been quite a lot of investments in terms of the, let's say, Labour Inspectorate and factory safety, there has also been quite a big investment generally in building up the capacities of government employers and trade unions to understand occupational safety and health better. And this has, there are a couple of key points here to mention. One of them is that the government has established under the Labour Inspectorate a specific occupational safety and health unit. So this unit's tasks are to then be the ones who will train others on occupational safety and health, and be in many ways the spearhead of the government in advising factories on proper standards and best practices concerning occupational safety and health. Secondly, and just as importantly, the employers have taken upon themselves to have specific programs and specific people which are dedicated to occupational safety and health. So we have to be quite, continue to be quite strategic and find the right kind of partners who can bring the industry forward so that the minimum standard is set and maintained, but also that there is more and more investment in over the minimum standard. Because at the end of the day, the reform processes that we are contributing to should not be only angled on arriving at the minimum lowest standard. It is quite important that all the learning and all the investment that we are engaged in will actually promote a more compliant, more functional, more innovative and more forward-looking industry that is not stuck with a mindset of minimum standard, but is actually looking forward towards a kind of like a more competitive and more investment and compliance-prone industry as a whole. What is very important for building up a culture of safety and health is that this culture of safety and health is internalized and supported by all the partners who are working on the industry. And these partners, they include the government, obviously. They include the employers through BGME and BKMA and other industry associations. They include the trade unions and work organizations. They include buyers. They play also a very important role in terms of creating a continuing demand for safety and health and promoting safety and health. And they include research organizations and NGOs. They also include donors who sponsor and support the overall reform agenda, such as in our case, in this program's case, the Canada, the UK and the Netherlands. Without this kind of collective will to continue to promote and push this agenda, we would not be as far as we are today.